Welcome to episode 319 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast that has a little bit for everyone. As you have no doubt deduced, Weer'd is not present tonight. He is recovering from a procedure. Don't worry, he's fine, but because of the preparations he had to do and then the anesthesia, he's not feeling his best. So he'll be back next week. Tonight, because I didn't want to cancel, is an ACP Round Table, and I am joined by DODD.
We are DODD.
How are you doing, fellas?
Oh, you asked us both at the same time.
And we're both
I'll
light.
go first. I'm doing pretty well. I ended up driving over 200 miles today, visiting 4 of our centers for work, but it was all fairly uneventful. So
yeah, my week's been okay. Today was pleasant. So I had applied at a local gun shop for work, and they said that they were full staff. They didn't really need anyone, but they'd keep me in mind. And then last week, I got a call from the owner saying, "Hey, are you available to come in to talk?" I'm like, yes. So I went in to talk today, and apparently on my resume, what got his attention was not my firearms experience and certifications, but my IT background. So I may be working there primarily doing either troubleshooting or doing some of their social media stuff or database admin at a higher rate of pay than if I'm a counter monkey. We discussed that.
That's very good, but here's the important question. Do you get the employee discount?
I did not ask because I don't like to ask too early on that, but I am fairly confident that there will be an employee discount. I just don't know how long I want to wait before I find out about it because I need to pay off some debt. And they are a suppressor dealer.
Oh no. Nothing like taking a job to facilitate your habit.
Yeah. Well, the previous gun shop I worked at, the one I worked at for 7 years, the first 3 months, I think, I worked there on credit.
Oh no.
Yeah. But this is a nice shop. Oddball, next time you're in the neighborhood, we'll swing by.
absolutely.
Yeah, the first time I stopped by there to ask about employment, my wife and I were out running errands, and she liked it.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, she said it was nice, it was open, it was well lit. And, all too many gun shops you go in and it has that cave motif.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I stopped by a gun shop in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee that has that nice, open, and well lit description as well. That
yeah, it's weird. There's something disconcerting. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like it, but it's you get so used to a certain style and then they change it.
It's like going into a comic book shop that isn't skeevy.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that is more common with the newer shops. Like this one that you're talking about, it's a fairly new shop in the area, right?
They've been around for a while, but this may be a relatively new location.
Okay. Yeah, and this one that I was at today was at least the sign on the outside said that it had opened up in 2020. So
yeah, and with this one, the owners are probably approaching retirement age.
Okay,
which makes it especially interesting because generally the gun shop owners who are in their 60s and 70s, they do the cave thing.
Yeah.
So it's, like I said, it's quite nice. They've got a good selection. They have a variety of digital night vision optics that makes my hands itch.
Well, if you get the job, we will drop a link to them. so we can support you by supporting them. And if they don't hire you, then we won't, because shame on them. So
I was like, I'm not sure how to respond to that.
So as for me, it took a long time, but my mom and I have finally cleared all of the downed trees and branches and other hurricane debris from the side and the back. And tomorrow it will have been 3 weeks since Milton came to Florida, and the trees are still in the front yard waiting for the city to come get them. Obviously, I didn't do a measurement, but I would say that there's several 100 pounds of wood there, and because we didn't stack it really high...
God, you're giving so many straight lines, and I'm literally biting my tongue because this is important.
Thank you. And we didn't stack them very high, so we stacked them out long, and I don't know, it's more than 20 feet, so it might be 25, 30 feet long. And that's just the standard in our neighborhood. And I don't know why we haven't gotten the lumber taken away. I have heard that it's because the county has only one truck for this sort of thing. And, I would think that, first of all, a county in Florida should probably have more than one truck for hauling away downed trees during the hurricane season. But even if they don't, there's such a thing as a rental. Right. The only thing I can think of is that maybe the aftermath of Milton coming ashore in Tampa along the Gulf, all of the available trucks and infrastructure have been rented and sent there. So that's the only thing that makes any kind of sense. I'm just sitting here going, guys, get tree chippers and just start dumping the wood pellets into, I don't know, pickup trucks or something.
Or put a pile aside for your garden as mulch.
Yeah, that would work too.
Yep. More experience with wood chippers is always good for when the revolution comes.
Yeah, that's true. About the only interesting thing that's happened is that most of the trees were pretty small, but we had one neighbor who had an honest-to-God tree come down. The logs were at least as thick, if not thicker, than a telephone pole. And this guy obviously had a chainsaw, and he cut them into rounds and had them by his driveway. And just we're coming back from a walk one day, walking the dogs, and it's like, oh, hey, half the wood is gone. And so apparently somebody in the neighborhood just took it to use it for fuel or for carpentry projects. And I'm just happy that it's being used. So I thought that was really neat. But other than that, don't have anything very interesting to say about my life right now. But we've got some topics that are very interesting. And so this first one, I don't know if people have heard about it because it wasn't making a big splash on a lot of social media. This comes from ProPublica, which is a publication that leans left. And when you read the article, yeah, you can tell that it's got an agenda, but I really feel that there is some legitimate research done here. And the thrust of the article is that it alleges, and there are screen caps and other things showing some degree of due diligence, so I don't think they're just making it up whole cloth, that...
They might be leaning it, but there's meat under it.
Yeah, I mean, there is most likely embellishment, because, as I said, the writer has an axe to grind, and it's definitely inflammatory, and towards the end, it quotes a debunked statistic, but, okay, enough telling you what it's about. This article talks about how gun companies worked with the National Shooting Sports Foundation in order to help influence elections. And, well, first of all, I encourage you all to read the whole thing. Because
Yeah,
okay, on
it's not excessively long, but it's not a clickbait title and a few paragraphs.
right.
They go in. I mean, I'm scrolling through. They go into a lot of the history, and they, like you said, they've got quotes and screenshots in here.
Right. And so I have mixed opinions on this because, on the one hand, I am all for the national lobby group of gun manufacturers actually lobbying to help elect pro-gun politicians, help defeat anti-gun politicians, fight unjust gun control, things like that. It's the way they did it that bothers me. And the short version here is that NSSF was collating a database of gun owners based on warranty cards that were sent in from firearm manufacturers. You know, you buy a gun, you fill out the warranty card, you send it in. That was sent on to NSSF, and that database was given to political entities. And
right. Basically, they were creating a mailing, emailing, calling list for mobilizing or informing through cold calling, etc., gun owners about upcoming events and elections.
And that in itself is fine. The thing is, we have a legitimate concern about the federal government creating a firearms registry. And this is basically that, only it's held by a third party. And I imagine that database could be subpoenaed. And
what it doesn't, at least in my quick scan of this article, it doesn't specify what data NSSF received, whether it was everything on the card, including make, model, and serial number, or if it was just the owner's name and contact information.
Well,
both would be bad. The former would be worse.
If you read deeper, they collect a lot of information about people, including their religion, what sports they follow. For women, they get intimate details about, for example, whether they're an extra large or a petite. There's a lot of information harvesting going on here.
Okay, that's clearly not from the warranty cards, though.
No,
that's scrubbing the internet based on the information they already received.
Yes, but the thing is...
Which makes it worse.
Yeah. The thing is, though, how would they know who to look at if they hadn't received the warranty cards in the first place?
Right. Yeah, that's the first key of this is a person of interest that we should find out more about.
Mm-hmm. And so, when I mentioned this on the Discord, one of the Matts from Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns asked, should we instead insist all gun companies do what SIG just did and give all their products an unlimited lifetime warranty so no registration would be needed? And my response to that is, well, it depends on what you mean by insist. Do I think that there should be a law to that effect? No. Do I think this would be a good policy for all firearm companies to adopt? Sounds really good to me.
Well, and I've found it kind of interesting that the low-end firearms manufacturers tend to have the best and easiest warranties to work with.
Like High Point.
Keltec.
Keltec, High Point, Bursa,
Taurus. I don't know about any more, but Taurus used to be great. Slow, but great.
And I mean, it's not. And I'm of course talking about price point, and some of this is a little bit different. But Henry also does if it's a lifetime warranty, if it's something where it's clearly the gun did something it's not supposed to, it's not you were bashing the gun over a stone wall.
Don't use it as a hammer.
Look at it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Although some of the optics companies don't even limit it by that. I think it was Loophole at one point, or Redfield. One of their stories was it was an optic that was on a hunting rifle, and the guy took a tumble down the mountain and landed on the rifle, or the rifle got bashed as it went down, and the scope tube was bent.
Right. Yeah.
And so he sent it in saying, I don't know if there's anything you can do. This is what happened. Let me know. And they sent him a new scope.
Nice.
Right. And nobody would have faulted Leopold at all for saying, dude, yeah, it's trashed. Sorry.
Right.
We'll happily sell you a new one.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I thought it was Leupold. It could have been one of the other manufacturers, like
right.
Redfield, but whoever it was doesn't matter. Is they could have very easily, honestly, and unreservedly said, yeah, that goes beyond any manufacturer warranty. But instead, here you go, new scope.
Yeah. While SIG is one of the few, and like you said, just recent, where of the quote big name manufacturers that has said, yeah, we'll just have a lifetime warranty against manufacturing defects.
Yeah. Rock Island, now they're not low end, they're not high end. I'd say they're at the top of the bottom third. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Yeah, their warranty I've heard good things about as well. It's not what SIG is now doing, but more and more I'm hearing that companies are going towards, we'll send you the part if it's a part that we can do that with, or just send us the gun and we'll fix or replace it.
Yeah, but the companies like, Beretta, and I think Smith & Wesson is the same way. It's like, yeah, you get 3 or 5 years. And that's if you send in the little card that came with the gun. But
you mean the NSSF database card?
Yeah. Or I'm sorry, I think with my last Beretta, it said, yeah, you get 3 years if you send in this warranty card. We'll extend it to 6 or 7. But and really against manufacturing defects, if it gets past year 1, then chances are it's good.
Right.
So I've told you how I feel about this database. How do you fellas feel about it?
We're both IT. I think that how we feel about it is probably pretty similar. Not surprised, but disappointed is mine.
It's one of those that I'm a bit conflicted, because that data was out there, and so somebody's going to harvest it, and at least this was being harvested for in the for an actual good cause. But I still have issues with it being out there to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, it would be one thing if when you fill out the warranty card, if it said somewhere on the warranty card, this information may be used for marketing purposes.
Well, I believe they did, but this wasn't specifically for marketing. This was done
but you know what I mean. This information may be used for marketing, market research, etc. Some kind of disclaimer, and people still fill it out and send it in because no one reads the EULAs. But it would still be a little cleaner. The fact that this was being done without informing the consumers is the part that's especially disappointing.
Yeah, that's the title of the article, Without Knowledge or Consent. And then
we're all big on consent.
And then when I mention Cambridge Analytica, because in 2016, according to this article, a contractor on NSSF's voter education project delivered a large cache of this data to Cambridge Analytica. And that data included 20 years of gun owners' warranty card information, as well as a separate database of customers from Cabela's.
Right. And so I was just checking the Smith & Wesson website about their warranty, since the question came up. And the initial warranty is free from defects in material and workmanship, of which Smith & Wesson receives written notice within 1 year from the date of purchase by the original owner, will be remedied without charge. And then further down, Smith & Wesson's lifetime service policy begins after the warranty period expired, and will repair without charge for the lifetime of the original owner any Smith & Wesson handgun purchased on or after February 1st, 1989.
Oh, okay.
So that's something. Of course, I think only 3 of my Smith & Wessons are from after 1989, and I think only 2 of them am I the original owner. So I'm SOL. Eligibility for this lifetime service policy requires returning the product registration card within 30 days of purchase, was the other part I wanted to mention in there. So, yeah, it's not awful, but it's not as good as some others.
Well,
I can kind of understand with someone like Smith & Wesson or Colt or the now defunct and reborn Remington, but companies that have been around for over 100 years, lifetime warranty on the life of the product is going to get expensive.
I would have less of an issue with this if I felt I could trust the government, but I can't. They've engaged in lawfare against the American public and especially against American gun owners for, I'm not really sure how long, but it increases in intensity every year. And my concern is, okay, if we're just finding out about this, they've known about it for a while, and who knows if they've gotten their hands on it. And while there is black letter law preventing the ATF from keeping a database, I mean, they've basically got a third party doing it for them. It's in the federal government version of the cloud. You know, all they have to do is get a subpoena, and it's like, well, that's all the information we need. So,
well, and quite frankly, the ATF legally is not supposed to have a searchable database, but they absolutely do.
Since at least 1968 on every new purchase. The 4473, the paper version is a distributed database. And with not a whole lot of effort, they can figure out which store handled which firearm.
And they've been scanning those and storing them electronically. And
now there's the e-form. Which saves them the trouble.
Yeah, and even if those are saved as PDFs and not dumped straight into a database, do you really think that there's not ways to quickly scan PDFs for information when those PDFs are uniform?
Yeah, I used to teach how to extract data from PDFs.
Right.
I very well know it's possible. But also remember a couple years ago now, I think it was, there was all the hoopla about the ATF inspector who was taking pictures of 4473s with her cell phone. And it's just, I was annoyed at that blatancy, but it wasn't information they didn't already have.
I remember back the 1984 version of Red Dawn, after the Soviet paratroops land in wherever it's set, I want to say Colorado, one of the first things the Soviet commander does is tell his subordinates to go to every gun store and look for the Form 4473s so that they know who in the population is armed so they can confiscate those guns.
Yeah, that was the Cuban commander of those forces, and I believe it was near Telluride, Colorado.
I didn't think the Cubans were in this one. Am I?
The original? Yeah, basically the leader of the soldiers who took the Colorado town that the boys lived in was Cuban.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to divorce memories of the more recent one where it was the North Koreans who invaded.
Was it 84?
I thought it was 84. It might be 86.
We are both correct. 84 it is.
Okay.
I was just wondering if there was any specific detail on the location of it. But yeah, Colonel Bella was the leader of the Soviet forces.
So, Oddball, you wrote here in chat that you've got a good story you want to share with us.
Speaking of not trusting the government, apparently this year is a historic year for the high numbers of of FFL licenses being revoked. In fact, it's the highest in the past 20 years, according to a article from The Trace,
aka Bloomberg's personal propaganda machine.
right? That This year, there have been 195 licenses revoked, which is up from last year's record-setting total of 173, which means roughly 2% of all FFLs that they inspected this year, they have found reason to revoke their licenses.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, not
what a lot
just,
of people. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Erin.
well, it's not just found a reason, but because there is a zero tolerance policy,
Mm-hmm.
the inspectors aren't even allowed to show discretion. If they find something, they have to instigate this procedure. They can't just say, okay, you made an honest mistake. Here's a warning. Let me work with you to make sure this doesn't happen again. It's, no, you made a mistake, and now you're going to lose your license.
Yeah.
And just as a little detail that people may not be aware of, up until around the mid-1990s, an 01 FFL, a retail license to participate in the business of firearms, cost $30 for 3 years. It was the same price as the 03 Curo and Relics FFL. But during the Clinton administration, that price was raised from $30 for 3 years to $300 for 3 years, which drove a massive number of what were called kitchen table gun shops out of business.
And
So that was a significant drop, and all of the reductions since are from the remaining fraction.
And a bunch of these are, as the trace is pointing out, there's a number of these where the agent that actually did the investigation just said, yeah, these guys screwed up, but I believe it was an honest mistake. And just, remediation is required, but everything's fine, wrist slap. And someone higher up reopened the case and said, nope, they're getting their license revoked. And again, according to Bloomberg's The Trace, a good number of these were minor clerical errors, including, the guy at the gun shop, when he ran a background check on the person, but wrote down the wrong case number or whatnot. But has the paperwork saying, I ran it and all that. I just, transposed two numbers or something.
Well, it's actually, there's actually a worse case, because
I have a bad one too.
Because they're talking about a gun store in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and they revoked the license because it didn't have the paperwork saying that a background check was done. And then when the ATF returned the sales records, he found the missing document, which was in the papers he gave them. The agency just skipped over it. And so when he shared this evidence with the investigators, they basically went, too bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it was their own fault. It was their own fault for missing it, but it's like, nah, you're screwed.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like asking the IRS for tax advice. If they give you the wrong advice, you go to jail. But the case that I remember this was when I still lived up in New York, so this is at least 7+ years ago, was a small, basically it was an antiques shop that also did some business in used firearms. And then they no longer had used firearms. And it turned out they had lost their FFL because this was back when things were pretty strict. They had used abbreviations for road and street instead of writing them out in full.
Oh, no.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's simply whatever the driver's license says, that's what you put on the form. If the driver's license spells out road, you put ROAD. If the driver's license says RD, you put RD. You're simply matching the state documentation. But back then, you were supposed to spell out everything, no abbreviations at all. And this was not a full-time gun shop. They were an antique shop that just sold some guns now and then.
Right. And again, talking about what's been going on this year, according to the article from The Trace, regardless of the politicians talking about getting tough on repeat offenders that are just blatantly selling guns to whatever gangbanger shows up. A lot of these shops that are having their FFL yanked from them are first-time offenders.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean,
Again,
if we're going to talk
for
about
minor things,
and if we're talking about selling guns to drug dealers, gangbangers, and criminals, that's the government's job.
well, there's that.
Yeah, I remember every time either the Trace or the government talks about this, they make a big deal about bad apple gun stores.
Mhm.
And gosh, I don't remember which state it was in, but there was one where the actual gun store was run by the state.
Yeah.
That sounds like something out of the Southwest.
Actually, I thought it was more the Northeast. Yeah, I talked about it in a previous episode. I don't remember which one it was, but it was a case of there was like one gun store, and maybe it was the one in DC. I don't remember the one that was basically run by
the city
the
police.
city. Yeah, that's gonna bug me.
That would be DC.
I'm gonna need to look that up.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I just posted a graph from that article in chat that shows the number of revoked licenses per year, and the jump in the past 3 years is rather dramatic.
Yeah. I mean, you have to go back to basically the late 2000s before you meet or exceed the last 3 years.
No, not even then.
According to that chart,
the closest was 2006.
Yeah,
late
that's the
2000s. They were well below.
No, I said the early 2000s.
Oh, I heard late.
If you heard late, I misspoke.
Okay. But
no, I meant like the 2000, whatever the first year on there is through 2008.
Yeah.
2008 is the last year that is higher than 2022.
Right.
And barely.
And that includes, the Obama era where you were talking about how FFLs were getting shut down for using abbreviations or not using abbreviations.
Yeah, minor administrative stuff.
Yeah, that is one of those where when the numbers jump up that much, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. If the numbers jump up that much, there needs to be, okay, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, it needs to be investigated. Yeah, because looking at this, the highest year under the Obama administration is lower than the last 2 years, according to that.
Okay, I found it. It was back in April. It was another round table. We were talking about the eclipse, and it was, in fact, a DC. And DC police dealt thousands of guns. ATF demands answers after concerning number found at crime scenes. So the one gun store that was run by the police was the bad apple.
Yeah. Oh, and also the other graph that is in the article is showing the percentage, and this is by far the highest percentage until you get back to the George W. Bush era. Even under Obama, you're looking at, maybe 0.75% at the highest point in 2014, and this past year it was at 2.
Yeah. Which article is this from?
The Trace, link in the show notes.
Okay.
I'll throw it in.
No, it's right there in front of me. I was looking too far down the list.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it was at the bottom, but since we talked about it now, Erin moved it up near the top.
I like having the show notes in chronological order.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no,
I agree.
Speaking of gun shops, who was it that posted about the Frederick gun shop owner?
I did not add any to this list, so I would probably be weird if it's not one of you two.
It wasn't me.
Not it.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was a story that I was following and I thought was particularly interesting because it shows the importance of not so much who is president, but the judges they appoint. And
Go on,
and
man.
this
You started
article
it. You
goes
run with
to-
it.
okay, yeah. But as Oddball said, it was a Frederick County business owner was acquitted on all counts in his machine gun conspiracy case. And this is in Baltimore, which, if you know how Baltimore feels about guns, this is particularly impressive that this came out this way. But the U.S. District Court in Baltimore came out and said, where's the actual quote that I was looking for?
Well, let's talk about what happened here. So,
okay,
and I feel
So,
like this has been
start with the
discussed
charges?
before. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
please.
So, conspiracy to interfere with government functions and to violate federal law regulating machine guns, making false statements during the purchase of a firearm, making false statements in records maintained by federal firearms licensee, making false statements to the BATFE, and unlawful possession of a machine gun.
Oh, okay. So
those are the charges.
Fair enough. You gave me what I literally asked for, but not what I wanted. Here's what I want.
Yeah, what actually happened?
Right.
Or what did they accuse him of doing?
So
the owner of the shop. Do you want me to continue, or do you want to grab it?
Let me do it.
Okay.
So you have a gentleman by the name of Robert Kropp, who is the owner of a shop called the Machine Gun Nest.
I wonder what they sell.
And so he has been accused of conspiring with the county sheriff, Chuck Jenkins, to illegally acquire 7 machine guns by misleading the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives about the intended purpose of the weapons. And so the way this works is that, well, I don't have a full understanding of it, but it seems like a sheriff will come to a gun store and say, hey, I would like to see a demonstration of a machine gun. And the gun store owner will go, okay, sure, this is for law enforcement purposes. I can get that delivered. And I will do a demonstration for you, and you can decide whether or not you want to buy the gun. And if the sheriff's department wants to buy the gun, they'll buy the gun. And if not, then, well, in this particular case, because he owns a machine gun store, I would imagine he's got the paperwork for it, and, you know, he can keep it as a rental. And
right. Now, there's a little bit more to the process, but that's the gist of it.
Okay. And so the accusation here was that this was all a conspiracy because no demonstration was made, and the order was placed just so that Kropp could have another machine gun to rent.
Uh-huh. Yeah. The additional element there is, in order to get a post-86 machine gun, the FFL has to have a request letter on department letterhead from the law enforcement agency.
Well, which is why there are also charges pending against the sheriff.
Right. One of the key elements in the defense was that that Kropp's attorneys pointed out that there is no specification in the ATF's policies defining a demonstration. So it could have simply been the officer in charge of acquisition comes in after the machine gun's received, looks at it on the counter, picks it up, handles it, works the action. Nah, this isn't it.
Mm-hmm.
Demonstration does not have to include anything. I mean, honestly, it doesn't even have to include the officer touching the gun.
And frankly, from my understanding, this is a lot of the machine gun rentals at commercial ranges. This is how a lot of those ranges acquire the machine guns that they rent out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course, an easier way to resolve this would be to get rid of the Hughes Amendment, at the very least, the NFA, if we can.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Then, I mean, think how much easier it would be for the ATF if there was no NFA.
Think how much easier it would be if there was no ATF.
Well, that's the next logical step.
Yes.
Yeah.
They've already farmed out the A stuff.
And pretty much all of the T stuff as well.
That I had not heard.
Yeah. There's this entire separate Tobacco Bureau and what's there's a whole separate bureau that deals with tobacco taxes, and I think the FDA has actually taken all the regulation of tobacco products from them.
Right. I know that there's a separate organization that does the alcohol licensing and investigation and so forth. So they're BFE.
I mean, I laugh because I know what that abbreviation stands for colloquially. I don't know about the rest of you.
Oh yeah, no.
So yeah. The gun store owner was acquitted because the ATF couldn't show its work. If the policies don't define a demonstration, Kropp couldn't have been guilty of not performing one. Mm-hmm. And the article mentions that next year in January, the trial for the sheriff is scheduled to begin. And while it's not a slam dunk, the fact that half of the alleged conspirators was acquitted, this makes a really good foundation for a similar acquittal for the sheriff.
Yes. It would make sense, because if the charges are the same for Kropp and the sheriff, and Kropp has been acquitted because the ATF didn't show its work, why would the sheriff not also be acquitted?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at that point, where's the crime?
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, again, get rid of the Hughes Amendment as a stepping stone toward getting rid of the NFA, and we don't have these problems anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So another problem we don't have anymore is a ruling in New York about how people in public housing can't have guns. David, you're from New York. You can tell us about this.
And I have a little bit of a history lesson here as well, because back in the 1990s, the Housing and Urban Development Department, agency, I forget which one it is, but HUD, came to an agreement and passed a regulation that basically anyone in state-funded housing could not own a firearm. Does anybody remember who the guy in charge of HUD during the Clinton administration was?
I do not.
I'll give you a hint. He later became Attorney General and then Governor of New York State, and then left in disgrace.
Is it Cuomo?
Yes.
Wow.
Prince Andrew. So,
and
that's a little bit of history.
To answer your earlier question, it is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I always see it referenced as HUD, and I couldn't remember the structure of it. But yeah, so that's how far back some of these processes go, because that was a federal thing that was, I believe, struck down under Bush Jr.
I think that's correct.
Yeah. But then it was put into place in New York. Now, I don't know if this is a city or state legislation that was struck down, because it's not quite clear. It's the Cortland Housing Authority. So yes, that would be state. But that's also in, a recent federal court ruling striking down a similar gun ban in upstate New York and paved the way for legal challenges in New York City. Yes. So a state law is the one that was overturned that bans residents of public housing from owning firearms. New York City has its own version of that state law.
Because New York City is special that way.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a bus short enough for how special they are. But in the ruling, Judge Glenn Suddaby said that the constitutional right to bear arms extends to public housing residents, and the government cannot impose restrictions on gun ownership based solely on the type of housing a person occupies. Damn straight, number one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Number two, if I'm remembering correctly, when the HUD regulation was shot down, I believe a similar statement was made by that judge.
Well, and also
that was pre-NYSERPA, by the way.
And also, in a case of deja vu, I believe that you accidentally put the wrong link in the show notes the first time around.
I did not put any links in the show notes.
Oh, whoever put the
we'll blame Weer'd.
Let's blame Weer'd. And he accidentally put a story about the housing authority in East St. Louis trying to do the same thing and getting that rule struck down in 2019. This is one of those things of we've been here, we've done that, we've proven that you can't do this.
Legal whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
Because it was done at the federal level, they said no. It was done at the state level, they said no. It was done at this other state level, New York in this case, they said no, and it's still in effect in New York City. So it's just, this is why I have this desire for, if a politician's legislation is deemed unconstitutional, there should be consequences. But to get back to the article at hand, the interesting part, this is the part that I thought was particularly cool, is the judge said his decision hinged on two key constitutional issues: the right to keep and bear arms under the Second Amendment, yeah, that's pretty clear, and free speech protections under the First Amendment, because the Cortland Housing Authority violated their free speech rights when it deleted critical comments from its Facebook page about the firearms ban.
Ooh, yeah, that's naughty.
Uh-huh. And the judge agreed on both counts. He found the lease provision banning firearms was overly broad and unconstitutional, and CHA's actions on social media amounted to viewpoint discrimination. The injunction also prohibits the CHA from censoring or deleting posts on its social media platforms that express views about firearms issues.
And then the very next sentence in the next paragraph. This ruling could serve as a precedent for similar challenges across the state, particularly in urban areas like Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brooklyn, I believe, has the largest, I don't know if it's raw number or per capita, of public housing residents in the state. So it's up to the tenants to challenge those rules. They have to have standing, as we've often discussed the abuse of the standing requirements.
Right.
But if they live in that housing, they have standing.
Mm-hmm.
So get to it, folks. If you or anyone you know lives in public housing anywhere that has a regulation of this type, start working.
There are times I wonder if New York, definitely city, maybe even state, has a bit of a masochism complex because
they're not here for the hunting.
Exactly. They keep issuing these laws and they keep getting smacked down, and I'm starting to wonder if they enjoy being punished.
That could be, but part of it is also the fact that basically since 1911 until fairly recently, how many of these laws were actually slapped down? Yeah, we're talking over 110 years of them doing this stuff and eroding the rights of their citizens, and it's only really in the last 5, maybe, that much notice was taken. Because Heller didn't affect New York. McDonald could have been applied to New York, but for the most part wasn't. And it really wasn't until NYSERPA that New York started having to deal with the consequences of its very own actions. So there's probably a certain level of, well, they can't do this to us.
We've gotten away with it so far.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, and I'm going to jump topics again, but speaking of having to have standing, Knife Rights is filing another lawsuit in hopes of getting rid of the Federal Switchblade Act, which, for those that don't know, there is a federal law in the books saying that it is illegal to manufacture or sell across state lines, etc., switchblades, gravity knives, etc. Now, as fans of the show know, that really hasn't been enforced recently. And in fact, that's actually been an issue that was actually the issue with Knife Rights' first attempt at suing to get rid of the law on the books because knives are also arms.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, why is it that switchblades are illegal? Because they could be used as weapons.
Because when you're a jet all the way.
Absolutely. But their first attempt at suing the state over this was dismissed because the federal government actually successfully argued that, well, yes, the law's on the books, but we don't actually enforce it, and we have no intention of enforcing it. So, therefore, the issue is moot.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, isn't there a reference later on in that article, despite the claim that they're not being enforced, that there was a TAC team that broke into someone's business or home using flashbangs and arrested them and confiscated millions of dollars worth of knives, and they ended up going out of business? So that whole "we aren't enforcing it" is bullpucky.
Yes. And in fact, let's see, I'm trying to find where it was again, because that incident was fairly recent. Yeah, it was in 2020, which, as legal stuff goes, that's fairly recent. So basically, the way I've read this is Knife Rights was just not prepared to debate we're not enforcing it right now, so that doesn't matter.
About that.
At the time of that case, and has found, oh no, here's a couple incidents recently where it was enforced. So that whole we're not enforcing it thing is completely untrue. And of course, it's the whole thing of the fact that the government had to go to that length, that particular argument, in order to not lose the case, is pretty telling that they're fairly certain that if it actually gets the scrutiny it deserves, that law is going to go out the window, as it should. But again, I always like to mention the guys at Knife Rights, because they do an awful lot of work with not a whole lot, and they're doing and they've managed to do a lot of good in a lot of states. So
yep, yeah. So this is something that we've talked about, and Oddball has definitely been the Knife Rights cheerleader, but he's absolutely correct. Is arms are arms, and Knife Rights is a tiny organization with a tiny budget, and they're making good headway. But with more of a budget, they can do more good works.
Yeah, and it's stuff like, there are still some areas, like in a couple weeks, I'm going to go up to Chicago for Thanksgiving.
I'm sorry.
Where
you beat me to it, David.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Where the knife laws for specifically the city of Chicago is maximum blade length of 2 inches. You've seen the size of my hands.
Yeah, it would have to be an 8-inch handle with a 2-inch blade sticking out the end.
Yeah, which a company makes one of those. But
yeah, on the positive side, isn't Chicago where most of the Malort is to be found?
Yes, and I plan on picking up a couple bottles.
You do not need to send one here. Although, how good is Malort at removing rust from metal?
No.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. Has your wife had any?
We were at your house, and you passed around a shot glass with it,
right.
and she took a sniff, and she looked at it, and then passed it back. She did not actually touch it to her lips, even though I was encouraging her to just try a little sip. She was like, "Nope."
Just the word malort. It sounds like the kind of gurgle your intestines make after drinking it.
Oh, we should ask Weer'd if that's one of the sounds that his guts made this past few days. But yeah, so she passed it back to Oddball, and he just held it up in a little toast and drained the shot. And my wife did not look shocked or horrified. She just shook her head sadly.
Yeah.
I'm not upset, just disappointed.
Pretty much. Oh.
Well, you know who we aren't disappointed in? And
is the folks in Massachusetts.
Yes.
The gun owners.
And unfortunately, Weer'd isn't here to talk about this. But yeah, the gun owners in Massachusetts, spearheaded by the Civil Rights Coalition.
Yep, the CRC.
Came in with bankers' boxes of verified, certified voter signatures, nearly 100,000 of them. Something like about 12 linear feet of them. Yeah,
and I think it was like they only needed 60,000 or something. I thought I read.
Probably. But yeah, there's no kill like overkill.
Right. Open fire and reload. There's no overkill.
And so,
but in addition to the signatures, what else did they deliver?
So there is a funny video linked. It's only like about 3.5 minutes. And there is a gentleman. I mean, the only name I get here is Toby. I'm not sure about what his last name is. Did y'all find that?
Toby Leary.
Yeah, there we go. Toby Leary, the co-owner of Cape Gun Works, who is leading this particular coalition. So he shows up. There's a photo op, and he's talking to 3 staffers who look very uncomfortable. They're polite, but you can tell they don't want to be here. And he's handing over some gifts. In addition to the nearly 100,000 signatures, he hands over... oh gosh, I know I'm forgetting some of the things, but a couple of copies of the Constitution for Governor Healy, one for home, one for office, one for the console of her car. There's a framed photograph, a framed front page of a newspaper that has both he and her on it. There are 2 different photographs that are composited together. And what's the third gift?
There was a copy of a pocket U.S. Constitution, a copy of the Massachusetts Constitution in its entirety, with a lot of highlighted areas where she's in violation of the state constitution.
There we go.
And a framed photo of me and her on the same cover of the Boston Herald together.
This is marvelous and very polite trolling. So yeah,
yep.
Watch it for a laugh. Mm-hmm. And so these signatures were to ensure that the okay, let me back up, because Weer'd and I have talked about this for 2, maybe 3 episodes now, and right when it looked like this law was going to be defeated, Maura Healey signed the emergency preamble to the law, allowing it to take place immediately and preventing opponents from suspending it. And so immediately, the Civil Rights Coalition sprung into action, and they needed a certain number of votes in order to place the repeal of this on the 2026 ballot.
Right.
And so they succeeded by an incredible margin. And then called a press conference just to make it publicly official, and
Weer'd supports the theory that Governor Healy did the emergency activation or whatever specifically because she knew this was coming.
Oh, I agree. If it was such an emergency, she would have signed it into effect immediately. Instead, she did it only when it was clear that she was about to lose.
Mm-hmm.
So they've made it very clear that for the next 2 years, they're going to take it down. And I don't think this is... Well, obviously, the final thing is going to be the election, but the article mentions this is one of the final hurdles en route. I don't know if there's anything else other than this, but they are definitely invested, and they've made it plain to Governor Healy that they are coming for this law, and I think they're going to win.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it should have been a major wake-up call to the state legislature when Smith & Wesson left. After actually close to 200 years, I believe.
I mean, yes, but the thing is, it wasn't so much that they left. They were basically chased out.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was basically one of those things of where Smith & Wesson said to the legislature, if you pass this law, we will leave. The legislature said, oh, no, you won't, and passed the law. And Smith & Wesson said, okay, thanks, bye. And came to a much, much nicer place. Better weather, better taxes.
I don't remember what place it is. Is it Tennessee?
It's about an hour south of me. If it was closer, I would have applied for jobs there already.
But it's close enough for you to make a pilgrimage.
Yes, which I still need to do. I just need to find out when they're having their next open house. Or, actually, my wife has hinted that she may actually apply for a job there.
Oh. Well, you mentioned it was too far.
She said,
so
yeah.
Remote job? Or would you be moving?
It would probably start out as on-site, but hopefully would transition to remote, because they do have some remote positions. She said some other stuff after that, but I just kind of heard squeeing.
All the blood rushing through your ears.
Blood was rushing, but not to my ears.
All right.
But yeah, so my questions were things like, do they have take your husband to work day? And what's the employee discount? And could I have access to the museum or the range or a tour of the manufacturing facility because my spouse works there? And she's just looking at me with that patient look on her face because, of course, she knows nothing about the answers to these questions because she hasn't even applied yet. She's just considering it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm suddenly 12 being told that my dad or mom is going to be working at the chocolate factory. Yeah, so Massachusetts is, in effect, being once again hoist on their own petard. And couldn't happen to many nicer states.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned this was glorious trolling and overkill, and we've got a different case of overkill. And unlike the first story, I know everyone listening to this has heard about it before because you can't escape it. If you're at all interested in firearms or Second Amendment advocacy, you have seen on the Twix about the former Marine or retired Marine. You can't call him an ex-Marine.
No, he served in the Marines.
He did serve in the Marines, who is practicing really bad range etiquette and ends up wounding a reporter with Spall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this whole situation and story made me so angry because all of it was very easily avoidable, preventable, whatever, just following some very, very simple basic guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, okay, there's the picture of, what's his name?
Lucas Kuntz, I believe.
Is he the politician or the range officer or...
Okay, Lucas Kuntz is the Marine who is running for state senate, I believe.
Right, so Kuntz is the politician.
Yes.
And
correct.
There is a photo of him standing there with an AR shouldered and his safety glasses on top of his head. Mm. I'm not taking issue with that because it's a posed photo. Fine. You know, people were bashing him for how are those safety glasses going to help you, dude? It's like, it's a posed photo. Things are going to happen like that. What I will take issue with is in the posed photo, his finger's on the trigger. If it's a posed photo, nuh-uh. You're not taking a shot. If you're taking a shot, safety glasses should be on. The steel targets that they were shooting at were...
way too close.
What, within 12, 15 feet? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And as Erin said, entirely too close for...
Yeah. I mean, the manufacturers of those steel targets include with them information on how to properly set up the steel targets. And one of the highlighted things that's repeated several times is distance and angle.
Yeah.
Distance, because if things bounce back, they only travel so far. And angle, if something does bounce, you want it to bounce into the ground, not back at the firing line.
Now, I want to get a little bit pedantic here because I have seen on multiple social media things someone talking about a ricochet. Actually, less likely to be social media, but some of these articles that we've read. This was not a ricochet because when a bullet ricochets, it never bounces back 180 degrees. It follows whatever wall, floor, or surface like that. This was...
For anyone's not sure what Erin's talking about, find a pool table.
Yes. Well, I mean, even with some of the balls, they do bounce back a little bit, but this
unless they hit straight on, they're going to bounce off, not straight back at the cue.
Okay. But what hit the reporter, Ryan Gamboa, was spall, which means the bullet hit the steel target, the bullet left a crater and broke off pieces, and the forces of that impact sent little fragments, spall, spiraling back.
Yep.
And
now that spall could have been fragments of bullet jacket, or it could have been fragments of steel target.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're also shooting a high-powered rifle at a steel target very close. And it wouldn't surprise me if they were using 62-grain steel core rounds, which will leave a crater in a steel target, as Oddball and I can attest, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Sorry, Oleg.
Yeah, so the spall hit a reporter in the arm, and it didn't seem like it was life-threatening, but he was definitely bleeding, and it wasn't clear to me if they used a tourniquet. It seemed more like they either used a belt or they used a tourniquet to keep the bandage in place, but they didn't, TQ off the blood because the guy, they then said that he basically returned to work and was able to continue photographing it. And, if you've got a wound that requires you to TQ off the blood supply, you're not going to return to work.
No.
Yeah, no. And the pictures do clearly show the tourniquet is used just to hold the bandage in place.
Yeah, they would have been better off with gauze probably, but just a wrap. But also based on the quantity of blood, it was not a life-threatening injury, because if it had hit a major blood vessel, there would have been a lot more red stuff on the outside.
But still, not a good look for any politician. Definitely not a good look for a photo op involving firearms. Definitely not a good look for a former Marine, because as we were all taught, every Marine a rifleman, he should know better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in fact, we've got a social media post from 2021 that did not age well at all, where Lucas Kuntz... Okay, so y'all remember the McCloskeys? In case you don't, they were...
We do.
Yeah, we do. They were the St. Louis couple who, when...
Mostly peaceful protesters?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't remember if it was Antifa or rioters or whatever, but they're the ones who broke the gate into the gated community. And so the McCloskeys, the man in the pink shirt with the AR-15, and then the woman who's almost limp-wristedly holding some sort of a pistol, and they brandished them and they went to trial and things like that.
I believe it was a Jennings or one of the other Ring of Fire.
Yeah, it was something like that.
It was a piece of crap.
And according to the investigation later, non-functional.
Yes. But yeah,
relevant.
Back then, Lucas Kuntz wrote in a Twix, hey, Mansion Man McCloskey, my offer still stands for a Marine-led weapons safety training before you get your next gun. It might just keep you out of prison before Election Day. Yeah.
Yeah, that aged like milk. But we're not done with what they did wrong on that day.
Oh, are we going to talk about the Tannerite now?
I was getting there. I was getting there.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
I was going to say, but wait, it gets worse.
So steel targets too close, improperly set up, not insufficient oversight of the shooters. When you can see the full picture, is there are plenty of firearms on the bench. I mean, Oddball, we saw plenty of firearms on the bench just a few weeks ago. And I will say, to their credit, the vast majority of the firearms are muzzle down range. There are a couple of handguns that look to be sideways instead. That can happen. I'm a little disappointed. But again, when you see the wide view picture of the two guys, Kuntz and I guess the other guy is Kinzinger?
Yes, because in another Twix, Lucas Kuntz says, "Great day at the range today with my friend Adam Kinzinger."
Right. And that's the pose photo where Kuntz has the glasses on top of his head, and they're both standing there with fingers on the trigger. Now, Kuntz, you can say, okay, he's miming firing the rifle. That could be understood for the photo op. The other guy, if it's Kinzinger, has the gun at port arms, low ready, and his finger appears to be on the trigger. Now, not 100% clear on that because of the angle, but based on the positioning of it, it looks like his finger is on the trigger.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that his finger is straight out, and because of foreshortening, it looks like it's on the trigger. But given all of the other idiocy on display, I'm not inclined to be charitable in this case.
Exactly. And there's also a lot of other clutter on the bench, and I would like to point out, in that same photo of the two guys, all the way to the right, there are two beverage containers on the shooting bench of a live range. Do you want GSR internally? Because that's how you get GSR internally.
So are you talking about lead, or are you talking about other things?
Lead is really a minor issue with modern ammunition. We've gone away from the lead styphenate primers, which was the main cause of lead on shooting ranges. But the reason you wash your hands after shooting is to get the gunshot residue, which is all sorts of nasty chemicals and their combustion results. You don't want that internally. And so one of the big rules on any range is no eating or drinking on the firing line. It's a safety concern right up there with eye and ear protection. It's more long-term in some respects, but it's still just as valid. I mean, the magazines and ammunition scattered on the benches, that's not a big deal at all. That's normal. There is, I'm not sure, it looks almost like a Costco-sized coffee creamer container right in front of Kuhn's. Not sure what that is. But then we get to the tannerite. Now, I will say, for those who are not familiar, tannerite is a binary low explosive. It is two compounds that are mixed together. Once they are mixed, they become impact sensitive, specifically to higher velocity impacts. Before they are mixed, they have about the impact sensitivity of playground sand. Based on the appearance of those containers, where you can see the contents are almost pure white, it's unmixed tannerite. So, not a big deal there.
Well,
however,
that is true, but the thing is, in order to tell, you have to get way too close. And I think most of us, upon seeing jars of tannerite on a shooting bench, would go, nope, I'm not getting close enough to find out.
We would back away and it wouldn't be slow.
Exactly.
But there's also the other aspect of that. If they are shooting steel at that close range, what's the likelihood they're going to do the same thing with the tannerite?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we here have seen enough videos of people being stupid with tannerite, but there are plenty of them online. I mean, FPS Russia almost cost his cameraman his life with a car door. There was the fellow who shot the refrigerator full of tannerite that was only saved by the tree he was using as a rest. And then there was the fellow who shot the lawnmower full of tannerite who lost his leg. Did he actually die or did he survive?
I think he survived, but he is
with
now
one leg.
down one leg. Yeah.
He has less than the initial authorization of legs, because that one was particularly foolish because he didn't remove the blade. B, he put explosives in a metal box that he was shooting at, and then when it wouldn't go off, he moved closer to take another shot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, always put the explosive between you and the shrapnel so that it blows it away from you. And by the way, here's another thing. It doesn't appear that there's a decent backstop.
No, there's woods and who knows what. But one more thing about the guy who shot the lawnmower and lost his leg. Even at his closest, he was further away from the lawnmower than these guys are from the steel targets. And that's likely where they would have set up the tannerite.
But wait, it gets worse.
Which worse are you talking? I'm not sure which worse you're talking about. There are several.
Okay.
Was this because there was also
So the person who claims to have set up the gun range goes by the name of Chad Everett Downs.
Ah, right.
And so there are two problems with Mr. Downs. We'll get to the worst one first, but the first one is that so he's acting as range safety officer, and he says that he gave them the safety briefing, and Kuntz and others didn't really appear to listen, and he sort of shrugged and went, well, okay, you know, I've done my due diligence by telling them I can't make them do it. And then at the Daily Caller, the link in the show notes, you've actually got screenshots of him on Facebook arguing with people. Yeah, those dudes were told where to stand. They didn't listen. And then he says, when you shoot steel, you always get frag. I've been hit probably 250 times.
Yeah.
My brother in Christ, this is not a flex. This is not the flex you think it is.
Nope.
You know, just start with the low caliber and work your way up so that you become immune to bullets.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're building immunity.
Yeah.
There is also the other aspect of Downs that I think you were leading up to.
Oh, I will. But here's another thing. Yeah, I just gave them a place to shoot, told them what I thought, then they did what they wanted to. So, yeah, he is just saying, no, not my responsibility.
Not my circus, not my monkeys, even though it's my land.
Exactly. Well, actually, he claims it's his range, but on a neighbor's land. But that's...
Why would that be?
I don't know if you're being rhetorical or not. I
am, because of the one of the following points you're going to be getting to.
So this last one comes from a friend of the show, Cam Edwards at Bearing Arms. And so Chad Everett Downs, who says that the range was his, but the event was taking place at his neighbor's residence. And Downs says that his neighbor allows him to shoot on the property. And then he showed a reporter from the Kansas City Star the firearms on the table that belonged to him. Now, this normally isn't a problem, except that Missouri court records show that Downs has been charged with 17 counts of felony perjury back in August. He's been issued a criminal summons, and his ex-wife in a court filing earlier this month alleges that the man owns or has access to guns in violation of his bond conditions. So this is somebody who, as a result of legal entanglements, is not allowed to own guns, is not allowed to shoot guns. It's questionable if he's even allowed to be in the area of guns. And he's acting as range safety officer and showing a reporter all these guns are his, and yes, he shoots them.
Yep.
So, I mean, with that in mind, it you hear all the mistakes he made as RSO, and you go, well, at least it makes sense now.
Mm-hmm. Although I love Cam, but every picture I see of him, his beard seems to be longer in each one. I mean, he's full on ZZ Top at this point.
Mm-hmm.
A great guy. I couldn't ask for a better friend of the Second Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe put him in charge of the ATF. He wouldn't accept it. Never mind. But yeah, that whole thing from start to finish, or as the saying goes, from soup to nuts, was just every turn in that story was a left. And I like I said, it literally was making me angry seeing all of the bad decisions that were made by these people. I don't care about their political affiliation. I don't care about their policy positions. These are simple, basic rules that everybody handling a firearm or on a firing line needs to follow. And they chose not to. And we are lucky. And that reporter is extremely lucky that that's all that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I feel my blood pressure going up as we talk about this.
Woosah,
Oh.
David, woosah.
Woosah. All right, here's hit a little piece of chocolate. That should help.
Okay, and now, as is tradition, Oddball added some topics at the last minute. Many of them videos, which I didn't watch because I was refreshing myself on the NSSF article rather than watching 30 minutes worth of videos. So,
Yeah.
Oddball, it's all you, baby. Take it away.
Okay. Well, and good news, bad news is I get a lot of my 2A news lately from the Four Boxes Diner, and
Since Weer'd isn't here, never heard of her.
and
I have heard of Four Boxes Diner. We've discussed them before.
Yeah, and Washington Gun Law, which
Yeah, William Kirk.
Yeah, William Kirk, who
Didn't
David
you guys
and I-
meet him at Goals?
yeah, we
Yes.
met him at Goals, and he just was a wonderful guy.
Yeah. Good stories, really genuine.
Good.
Yeah. But anyway, so I know a lot of folks have already talked about the Maryland assault weapons ban case that SCOTUS is considering taking up. And the latest on that is that Maryland has asked for a second extension to put in their response, which I love the fact that they put in a second extension with one of their arguments being, well, we need more time because we've gotten sued a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need more time because we've got a whole bunch of other lawsuits about this that we're dealing with.
Yeah, specifically 2A lawsuits and another lawsuit that is coming up in front of SCOTUS.
We don't have that as one of our sounds.
And
I was looking for the Cry Some More audio clip.
Right. And one thing that I did see that I think Mark at Four Boxes Diner pointed out that people haven't really talked about is the one of the reasons that they were probably asking for another 30-day extension on responding is that 30-day extension would happen to put them past the deadline for, okay, this case won't be heard this year.
Oh yeah, the ending of SCOTUS acceptance period or whatever.
Right. It would
I'm
bump the
sure
case.
That's completely unintentional on their part.
Right. Yeah. It would bump it from the 24-25 docket to the 25-26. Fortunately, I believe SCOTUS noticed that in their response, saying no.
Was it Clarence Thomas? I hope it was.
I would honestly have to go back and look. I don't think it was Thomas.
Actually, it would be better if it wasn't Thomas.
But I think it was somebody else that said, we see that if you did that, then that would put you guys on the next time around, and you guys have already gotten plenty of time to respond.
We see what you're up to and what you're trying to do, and the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But while we're seeing this being dealt with, there's another assault weapons ban case that is possibly up in front of SCOTUS, which is against the state of Delaware, Jennings versus Gray. And SCOTUS has informed Delaware that, no, seriously, we need your response for the petition for writ of your response to the plaintiff's petition for writ of certiorari. And one of these days, I will actually properly pronounce that word. Today is not that day.
I feel your pain.
Um,
One of my recent segments, I cut out the I should have looked in for the blooper reel for Weer'd. It was like 5 or 6 times. I don't remember even what the word was, but it was just I could not say the word.
mm-hmm.
So yes, I definitely feel your pain.
But yeah, SCOTUS has actually directed Delaware to respond to this petition, which anyone reading the tea leaves pretty much sees this as SCOTUS going, okay, we're gonna have to take one of these cases, which yay. Well, I mean, hopefully. But it does look rather good that in the next year or two we will see an assault weapons ban in front of SCOTUS. It's really a question of which state's assault weapon ban is going to be there.
Well, they might.
I of course kind of hope that New York is up for another spanking.
Well,
but it's somebody else's turn in the barrel, I guess.
Well, one thing SCOTUS does is that you've got, if there are cases that are similar, they'll bundle them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility.
Yeah, they could bundle them, or they could say, okay, we like this case better than that case for
reasons,
whatever reason, and the case that doesn't get taken up, yeah, it'll just be in a holding pattern. We'll figure out this case, and then we'll remand the other case back down to the lower court with the directions of, hey, did you see how we rolled in this almost identical lawsuit? You might want to pay attention to that. And of course, I saw it, and I don't think anybody. And also one of the things to point out is Delaware and Maryland are from different circuits. I believe Delaware's under the 3rd, and Maryland's under the 2nd.
Oh, okay, I can see that.
So there is also a little bit of SCOTUS maybe looking at, okay, what did the appellate courts, what were their arguments or their findings as guidance towards which case they want to take up, or as Erin said, combine the two.
So I looked it up, and Maryland is the 4th Circuit, Delaware is the 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the which circuit is over which states? Yeah, their numbers. I can't remember them. And in some unfortunate news that I don't think is of any surprise to anybody, but an appellate court has upheld Washington, D.C.'s high-capacity magazine ban.
In the weirdest way.
Now, the strange thing, the strange thing is in their decision, it was a 2-to-1 ruling, and in the majority's decision, they actually stated that yes, magazines do count as arms, and high-capacity magazines are in common use, but that doesn't matter because they're of uniquely military use or something to that effect.
How they came to that is just interesting.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, as anybody who has actually read the NYSERPA versus Bruin decision,
and folks, it's not terribly long.
No, it's not. And it's kind of amusing in parts.
Yes.
The whole in common use test is not an end-all be-all in disqualifying or in allowing regulation, but it is pretty damning as far as saying no, this regulation is unconstitutional. And it's one of those, okay, preliminary, okay, we can just throw it out because this is an arm in common use. And that's what the court found, was that yes, this is an arm in common use, but we can regulate it anyways because the military uses it. Which also, I always love the twist of, if you actually read the Miller decision, with the Miller decision found that specifically the decision where the court said yes, it's perfectly fine to regulate short-barreled shotguns. Their finding was, oh yeah, because the only arms that count towards the Second Amendment are arms that are of military use.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that irks me about the Miller decision, particularly, is short-barreled shotguns were used in the trenches of World War I. How did the justices not know of that?
Well, wasn't the Miller decision also the one where the defendant died, and then the lawyer went, I'm not getting paid, so I'm not showing up, and so it was basically a forfeit?
Correct. Yeah. It's not absolutely known, but it's pretty well. It's a pretty good guess that Miller was dead by the time SCOTUS actually heard the case, and the lawyer and his lawyer didn't bother showing up because he wasn't getting paid for it. But yeah, and there hasn't been any SCOTUS ruling since Miller that has addressed has said, oh no, military weapons are no bueno. We know what Miller said. We don't care. So in a right and just world, an en banc review of this case should go, wait, the lower court or the not the lower court in this case, but the 3-judge panel found that yes, these were arms in common use. Okay, cool. No, we're reversing their decision, and that high capacity magazine ban is in fact unconstitutional. But that's also something that I think I know I've ranted on the mag dumps my feelings towards a number of judges that have clearly willfully misunderstood or straight up ignored Knight Serpa versus Bruin and Heller and Heller and McDonald. But
again, there should be consequences.
Yeah, I the one that I really think there should have been consequences for was the lawsuit of NRA versus New York over the free speech thing, where the ACLU came to defend the NRA.
The national ACLU. The state level ACLUs are varied organizations, but the federal level, their copy of the Bill of Rights skips the second.
Right, and I'm not talking about, oh yeah, they acted as friend of the court or something. No, they actually their head lawyer actually represented the NRA on it, and SCOTUS ruled 7-0. And I really
7-0 or 9-0
or 9-0. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And
when you first said, like, wait, who abstained?
Right. And I'm sorry. I really think that there should be a rule that if all 9 judges of SCOTUS agreed that the lower courts got it wrong, something needs to happen to the lower courts. Doesn't matter what topic we're talking about. Just, can we agree that if it's unanimous that no, you got it wrong,
Yeah, you done messed up.
Yeah.
Well, you know who hasn't messed up?
Our
patrons.
listeners,
Or our listeners, and yeah.
including our patrons.
Clearly not me.
Thanks to each and every one of our listeners, and a very special thanks to all of our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/AssortedCalibersPodcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like our hilarious blooper reels, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP Mag Dump. Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off. Dodd, where can we hear from you?
Dodd is everywhere.
Well, you can hear more from me oftentimes on Handgun Radio, and I have a blog at gunscarstech.com, which I should probably update at some point. And I can be found hanging out at the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook page.
This portion of Dodd is also here regularly on Handgun Radio whenever I can. I'm also on the ACP Facebook page. I'm a contributor to the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. And I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under Brenna Bach and David Bach.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Erin Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Erin Paulette, all one word. And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music. This is This is normally the part where I'd say something funny, but I've just done all that spiel and my brain's not in it. So,
our brain pudding levels are assorted, and so is our podcast.
There you go.
It's weak, but I'll take it. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
But everyone loves pudding.
Well, no, it's not that. It's just the format is, well, you know, I am this, but he is that.
Oh, okay.
Our whatevers are assorted, and so is our podcast.
Erin's brain is tapioca, and ours are rice pudding. Our brain pudding is assorted, and so is our podcast. Is that better?
Say good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Yes, much better. Thank you.